Dead things don't send a second signal. Nathan Cole had learned that lesson 20 years ago on a frozen moon where bad weather, broken sensors, and human hope had buried too many people beneath too much ice. The dashboard clock on his transport truck blinked 11:43 p.m. as the storm rolled harder across Cairn 7. Wind slammed against the armored frame with a low metallic groan, rattling bolts that had probably needed replacing months ago. Outside the windshield, the world had disappeared beneath curtains of white. Snow and ice particles swirled beneath the headlights like ghosts caught in a current. The bridge ahead stretched across a narrow, frozen ravine, barely visible through the chaos. Nathan tightened his grip on the wheel. His gloved fingers flexed against worn synthetic leather as the truck crawled forward at 12 miles per hour. Slow enough not to slide, fast enough not to freeze. The heater hissed weakly beside him, struggling against outside temperatures sitting at nearly 40 below. Red warning indicators flickered softly across the dashboard. Wind hazard, severe. Visibility, low. Travel advisory, return to shelter. Nathan ignored all of them. The old truck had survived worse things than weather. So had he. The radio crackled briefly before collapsing back into static. Nothing unusual there. Cairn 7 liked eating communications. Nathan reached over and turned the volume lower. Silence felt easier tonight. Easier than hearing old songs or distant voices. Easier than remembering things he spent years trying not to remember. Ahead, his motion scanner released a quiet chirp. Nathan frowned. A small blue icon blinked once along the lower corner of his display, then disappeared. He glanced at it. Probably interference. Storms did strange things to electronics here. He kept driving. 3 seconds later, the scanner chirped again. Nathan looked back. The icon returned. Life sign detected. Range, 87 feet. His jaw tightened. Under the bridge. He stared at the screen for several seconds. Then at the road. Then back again. The scanner emitted another soft tone. Life sign status, terminated. Nathan exhaled slowly through his nose. There it was. Faulty reading. Happens all the time. He shifted slightly in his seat and pressed harder on the accelerator. The truck moved ahead. 50 feet passed. Then 100. Then 200. Wind screamed across the vehicle so violently the whole frame shuddered beneath him. Nathan stared ahead into endless white. 300 feet later, the scanner chirped again. His eyes moved down. Life sign detected. Same location. Same signal. Same impossible reading. Nathan stared at it without blinking. Outside, the storm howled against steel and ice. Inside, only the dashboard lights moved across his tired face. Then he muttered quietly to himself. Damn it. He hit the brakes and turned the wheel. Nathan swung the truck around in a slow arc, tires crunching through packed ice beneath the storm. The headlights swept across walls of white and steel support beams beneath the bridge before settling back on the narrow service road. His jaw remained tight. He hated this feeling. Hated the old pull in his chest that always arrived before he made decisions he knew would complicate his life. 20 years in uniform had trained him to recognize danger. 10 years after leaving had failed to teach him how to ignore people who needed help. Snow hammered the windshield harder now. Tiny shards of ice hissed across reinforced glass like handfuls of sand. The wipers fought to keep up, moving back and forth with a tired mechanical rhythm. Nathan eased the truck beneath the bridge structure where the steel framework offered partial shelter from the wind. The motion scanner chirped again. Life sign detected. Range, 42 feet. He stared at it. Same signal strength. Same location. The reading pulsed steadily now, almost stubbornly. Nathan shifted the truck into park and reached behind his seat. The emergency gear locker snapped open with a hydraulic click. He pulled out a thermal field jacket and a portable scanner unit. Then he hesitated. His eyes drifted toward the old combat case secured against the wall. Dust coated most of it now. The military emblem across its side had faded years ago. He stared at it for several seconds before shaking his head. Not tonight. He sealed his jacket collar and stepped outside. The cold hit instantly. It felt less like air and more like a physical thing pressing against his face. Sharp. Heavy. The wind shoved against him hard enough that he leaned forward on instinct. His boots sank several inches into fresh snow as he moved beneath the bridge supports. The portable scanner glowed blue against his wrist. 30 feet. 28. 23. Nathan moved slowly around frozen support columns layered with ice thick enough to reflect his flashlight beam. Shadows shifted strangely beneath the bridge. Snow collected in small drifts against broken maintenance barriers and abandoned equipment containers left behind years ago. 20 feet. 15. The scanner emitted a softer tone now. Nathan narrowed his eyes. Something was there, half buried beneath snow near the far side of the bridge structure. At first he thought it was debris. A broken tarp maybe, or old thermal insulation wrapped around damaged equipment. Then the wind shifted. The flashlight beam moved slightly, and something reflected back. Not metal. Eyes. Nathan stopped moving. For a second, neither of them moved at all. The world seemed to shrink into the sound of distant wind and the pulse of his scanner. Beneath layers of frost and snow sat a figure curled tightly against the steel foundation. Long silver strands of hair had frozen against dark fabric. Blue skin, pale beneath layers of ice crystals, caught the light with an almost unreal softness. Her eyes stared back at him without blinking. Golden. Wide. Watching. Nathan felt the breath leave his lungs slowly. Because she was not looking at him like someone waiting to be saved. She was looking at him like someone waiting for him to leave. Nathan kept the flashlight low. Bright lights made frightened people unpredictable. He had learned that long before the war ended. Snow drifted sideways beneath the bridge, swirling between rusted support beams and frozen maintenance pipes. The alien woman did not move. Her breathing looked shallow beneath layers of frost gathered across her dark clothing. One sleeve had frozen solid against the ice behind her. Nathan slowly crouched several feet away. Close enough to help. Far enough not to corner her. The scanner on his wrist continued pulsing blue. Heart rate weak. Core temperature dropping. Not good. You understand English? He asked over the wind. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That was answer enough. Nathan reached toward a pouch on his jacket and pulled out a thermal ration bar. He placed it carefully on the snow between them instead of offering it directly. You are about 10 minutes away from becoming an ice sculpture, he said calmly. So, I'm going to try something old-fashioned here. The woman stared at the ration without touching it. Snowflakes melted slowly against her blue skin before freezing again along her jawline. Up close, she looked younger than he first thought. Maybe mid-20s by human standards. Maybe not. Alien species aged differently. He noticed faint silver markings beneath the frost near her neck. Not tattoos. Too symmetrical. Some kind of biointerface maybe. Nathan kept his voice steady. My truck has heat. Coffee that tastes terrible. And a generator that only catches fire twice a week. Nothing. Then finally she spoke. Her voice sounded rough and thin beneath the storm. Leave. Nathan almost smiled despite himself. There it was. Pride. He recognized it immediately. Soldiers spoke like that when they were injured. So did people who had already been abandoned once before. He leaned back slightly against the steel beam beside him. Funny thing, he muttered. I was planning to. Her golden eyes flicked toward him again. Nathan could feel her studying him now. Measuring him. The same way he was measuring her. His gaze drifted lower. One hand remained tucked tightly beneath her coat, holding something against her chest. Nathan noticed it immediately. Small. Circular. Metallic. What is that? He asked quietly. Her expression hardened instantly. Nothing. The answer came too fast. Nathan exhaled slowly. All right. He did not push further. People protected strange things when they were scared. Memories. Photographs. Rings. He understood that too well. A powerful gust roared beneath the bridge hard enough to shake loose ice from overhead supports. The woman flinched slightly at the sound. Nathan noticed that too. The scanner beeped again. Core temperature critical. Nathan rubbed one gloved hand across his beard before speaking again. Listen carefully, he said. You can hate me later if you want. Right now you need warmth. Silence stretched between them. Then her hand suddenly moved. Fast. Nathan froze instinctively as a thin shard of metal appeared in her fingers. Not exactly a knife. More like broken machinery sharpened into a crude edge. She pointed it toward him with a trembling hand. Nathan did not reach for a weapon. Did not move at all. The wind screamed through the bridge supports while snow spiraled around them in ghostly waves. Her arm shook violently from cold. Still she held the metal toward his throat. Do not touch me, human. Nathan stared at her for a long moment. Then his tired gray eyes drifted toward the tiny piece of sharpened metal. That thing barely qualifies as optimism, he said quietly. For the first time, something flickered across her face. Not trust, not fear, confusion. Nathan slowly removed one glove and held out his bare hand toward her. The freezing air bit instantly against old scars crossing his knuckles. Nathan Cole, he said. Retired. Grumpy. Terrible cook. The woman stared at his hand like she had forgotten people offered them without demanding something in return. Then another violent gust tore beneath the bridge and her body swayed hard against the ice. Nathan caught it immediately. She tried to resist, tried to pull away, but the second his hand touched her shoulder, he felt how cold she really was. Not cold like winter. Cold like someone slipping away inch by inch beneath the snow. Nathan barely had time to tighten his grip before her knees gave out completely. The sharpened piece of metal slipped from trembling fingers and disappeared beneath the snow with a soft crunch. For a moment her body stayed tense against him, every muscle resisting on instinct even while exhaustion pulled her the opposite direction. Then that resistance slowly faded. Not because she trusted him. Nathan knew the difference. Bodies gave up long before people did. The wind slammed through the bridge supports again, carrying fine crystals of ice that stung. Exposed skin like tiny needles. Nathan adjusted his footing and pulled the thermal jacket from his shoulders. He wrapped it around her carefully. Her eyes opened halfway, watching him through strands of frozen silver hair. Suspicion remained there. So did confusion. Probably because he was not acting the way she expected. You should not, she whispered weakly. Nathan secured the jacket around her and glanced down at her. I know. Her breathing looked uneven now. Small white clouds escaped her lips before disappearing into the storm. Nathan slid one arm beneath her shoulders and another beneath her knees. She felt lighter than he expected. Too light. Not fragile exactly. Just wrong. Like carrying someone who had not eaten properly in a long time. Her eyes widened slightly as her feet left the ground. Put me down. Nathan started walking. No, human. No, I said put me down. Nathan shifted her weight carefully while moving through knee-deep snow. You are not exactly negotiating from a position of strength right now. Silence. He could feel her staring at him. Not angry. Studying. The truck headlights glowed through blowing snow ahead like distant stars. Ice crackled beneath his boots while the storm screamed around them. Nathan felt cold reaching through his layers now. The kind that slipped beneath clothing and settled into bones. His arms tightened instinctively around her. Beneath the thermal jacket, she was still freezing. Not winter cold. Worse. The kind of cold that made people quiet. The truck door opened with a hydraulic hiss the moment they reached it. Warm air spilled out from inside, carrying the scent of old leather, machine oil, and burnt coffee. Nathan stepped inside and sealed the door behind them. Instantly, the wind disappeared. Silence dropped around them, so suddenly his ears rang for a second. Only the heater remained, rattling somewhere beneath the dashboard like an annoyed animal. Nathan lowered her carefully onto the passenger seat. Frost had gathered along her hair and shoulders. Small crystals melted slowly beneath the warmer air. She blinked several times, looking around as if she had stepped into another world entirely. Her eyes drifted over tools scattered on the floor. Spare engine parts. Empty coffee cups. An old baseball cap hanging near the windshield. Human things. Ordinary things. Nathan knelt beside the seat and opened a storage compartment beneath the dashboard. He pulled out emergency heat packs and activated them one by one. Soft orange light spread beneath thin fabric layers. He wrapped them gently around her hands. Her fingers twitched slightly beneath his touch. Drink this when I hand it to you, he said while reaching toward the heating unit. It tastes terrible, but it keeps people alive. She looked down at the warming packs around her hands, then back at him. Her voice sounded smaller now. Quieter. Why? Nathan stopped moving for a moment. His eyes lifted toward her. Outside, the storm continued throwing itself against steel and glass. Inside, warm air hummed softly around them. Because I turned around, he said simply. Then he froze. Because beneath the edge of her coat, he finally saw the object she had been protecting against her chest. It was not a bracelet. Nathan stared for a few seconds before reaching slowly toward the edge of her coat. He stopped halfway there. Her eyes immediately sharpened. Even exhausted, even freezing, that reaction was instant. Nathan pulled his hand back. Relax, he said quietly. I am not taking it. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly, but only slightly. He moved toward the heating unit beside the dashboard instead and filled an old metal cup from a small thermal reservoir mounted near the passenger seat. Steam curled upward immediately, carrying the bitter smell of overused coffee grounds and synthetic cream powder. Nathan handed it toward her. Careful. She stared at it suspiciously. What is it? Technically coffee. She looked at the cup, then at him. Technically. Nathan shrugged. I stopped asking questions years ago. For several seconds, she simply held it. Warm air from the heater moved through the cabin, slowly melting frost from her hair and shoulders. Tiny droplets slid down silver strands and disappeared into the fabric beneath her collar. Nathan sat back in his seat and watched snow hammer against the windshield. Outside, white and darkness. Nothing else existed beyond the glass anymore. The storm had swallowed the world. He leaned forward and adjusted the heat controls higher. The old system groaned in protest. Come on, he muttered toward the dashboard. Do not embarrass me now. Something soft reached his ears. Nathan blinked once, then looked toward the passenger seat. The alien woman had lowered her head slightly. Her shoulders moved once. Barely. Nathan stared at her. Did you just laugh? Golden eyes lifted slowly toward him. No, Nathan nodded. Right. Silence settled again. Not uncomfortable silence. Just quiet. The heater hummed softly while snow tapped against metal outside. Nathan leaned his head back against the seat and closed his eyes for a moment. Then he remembered what he had seen beneath her coat. His eyes opened again. Carefully this time he looked toward her chest where the object remained partly visible beneath dark fabric. Not a bracelet. Not jewelry. It looked like a small metallic frame no larger than his palm. Thin silver lines crossed its surface in circular patterns that pulsed with a faint blue glow beneath the dim cabin lights. Some kind of technology. Nathan had seen enough military equipment over the years to recognize advanced hardware when he saw it. But this looked different. Less industrial. More personal. He glanced toward her. That thing you were carrying. Her fingers tightened instantly around the object beneath her coat. No, Nathan raised an eyebrow. I did not ask anything yet. Silence. Then she looked away toward the window. Outside, the storm continued raging across endless darkness. It stays with me, she said quietly. Nathan studied her face. The words themselves mattered less than the way she said them. Not fear. Not possession. Something else. Something deeper. People carried different things after losing enough of their lives. Some carried photographs. Some carried rings. Some carried guilt. Nathan looked down toward his own left hand resting near the wheel. A faded line still circled his finger where a wedding band used to sit. He looked away. Fine, he said after a while. Keep your secrets. The woman looked back at him slowly. Her expression changed just a little. Less guarded now. Less sharp around the edges. She lifted the cup and finally took a careful sip. 2 seconds later, her face twisted. Nathan looked over. Terrible. She stared at him in complete disbelief. Human. Yes. This tastes like burned engine fluid. Nathan smiled for the first time all night. Then suddenly a soft sound came from beneath her coat. Both of them froze. The small silver object had started glowing. The soft sound came again. Not loud. Just a faint chiming pulse beneath layers of fabric. Nathan looked toward her immediately. The silver device resting against her chest had shifted from blue to a warmer color now, somewhere between gold and pale white. Thin lines across its surface illuminated one after another in circular patterns. The light reflected against her hands and climbed softly across her face. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Even the old heater seemed quieter somehow. The woman reacted first. Her eyes widened, and she grabbed the device instantly, pulling it tighter against her chest. Fear crossed her expression so quickly Nathan almost missed it. Not surprise. Fear. Real fear. No. She whispered under her breath. No, no, no. Nathan straightened slightly in his seat. Easy. Her breathing became uneven again. She stared down at the glowing object as if it had betrayed her somehow. Her fingers moved across the surface rapidly, pressing along silver patterns and small circular nodes. Nothing changed. The soft light continued pulsing. Nathan watched silently for several seconds. Years ago, he would have asked questions immediately. Military training taught people to identify unknown technology fast, assess threats, control situations. Years after leaving service had taught him something else. Sometimes people needed room before they needed answers. Outside, Snow hammered against the truck hard enough to rattle the frame. White waves rolled across the windshield beneath distant bridge lights. Nathan glanced toward the storm and then back toward her. "Do I need to be worried?" he asked quietly. The woman shook her head immediately. Too quickly. Nathan raised an eyebrow. That fast answer usually means yes. She looked at him, then away again. Her golden eyes reflected the pale light from the object in her hands. "It is not dangerous." Nathan leaned back against his seat and folded his arms. That sounded slightly better. Silence returned for several seconds. Nathan watched her shoulders rise and fall beneath the thermal jacket. The shaking had almost stopped now. Color had returned slightly beneath her blue skin. Not much, but enough. She was warmer. Alive looked better on people. Nathan decided he preferred it. Finally, she looked toward him again. "You ask very few questions." Nathan stared toward the windshield. "I used to ask a lot." Snow swirled endlessly outside. He watched headlights reflect against ice particles moving through darkness like stars caught in a storm. "Then I figured out something." Her eyes stayed on him. "What?" Nathan shrugged. "Most people tell you things when they are ready." The soft, pulsing light continued between her hands. She looked down at it quietly, then toward him. "And if they never are?" Nathan was silent for a moment. His eyes drifted toward the faded ring mark on his finger before moving away again. "Then they carry it alone." Something changed in her face after that. Not much, just a small movement around her eyes, like a wall shifting half an inch. She looked down at the silver device and slowly opened her hands. Nathan leaned forward slightly. The object rested in her palms, now beneath soft white light. Circular patterns rotated gently across its surface. Then suddenly the air above it shimmered. Nathan blinked once. A small holographic image appeared above the device. Tiny, no larger than a coffee mug. He stared without moving, because floating above her hands was a little girl with silver hair, smiling toward the stars. Nathan forgot about the storm for a moment. Forgot about the ice hammering the truck. Forgot about the bridge and the impossible signal that had pulled him back through the darkness. He simply stared at the tiny hologram floating above her hands. The little girl could not have been older than 6 or 7 by human standards. Silver hair drifted around her face in soft waves while bright golden eyes looked upward toward invisible stars. Tiny points of light rotated around her image, forming little constellations that slowly shifted and moved through the air. She was laughing. Nathan could not hear it, but somehow he knew. He recognized that expression. Children looked the same everywhere. Human, alien, did not matter. Joy had a language older than words. The woman had gone completely still beside him. Nathan looked toward her carefully. Her eyes never left the hologram. The guarded look was gone now. The suspicion, the sharp edges, all of it had disappeared beneath something quieter, something heavier. Her fingers trembled slightly around the device. "Your daughter?" Nathan asked softly. The question hung between them. For several seconds, only the heater answered. Then she closed her eyes. Just once. "No." Nathan looked back toward the image. "Niece." Silence. "Sister." The woman swallowed slowly. "No." Nathan frowned slightly. He looked toward her again. "Then who is she?" Her eyes stayed fixed on the tiny hologram. Snow continued striking the truck outside in soft waves while white light reflected across her face. Nathan waited. He had learned patience years ago. Sometimes silence worked harder than questions. Finally she spoke. Her voice barely rose above the sound of the heater. "I do not know." Nathan blinked. "You do not know?" She shook her head slowly. "I have seen her before." Her eyes drifted downward. "Many times." Nathan stared at her for several seconds. Something cold moved through his chest then. Not fear exactly. Recognition. The kind that came when pieces stopped fitting correctly. Earlier beneath the bridge, she had protected the device more than herself. She had looked terrified when it activated. Not protective. Terrified. Nathan looked back toward the hologram again. The little girl continued smiling while stars moved gently around her tiny form. He leaned forward slightly. "What exactly is that thing?" The woman looked down at the device in her hands. "Memory archive." Nathan frowned. "Like a recording?" She hesitated. "Not exactly." He waited. Her eyes slowly lifted toward him. "My people use them to preserve important experiences." Nathan stared at her. "Family memories?" "Sometimes." Her voice grew quieter. "Lost memories." Silence settled across the truck again. Nathan looked at her carefully now. Really looked at her. Earlier, he had been focused on frost and injuries and survival. But now he noticed other things. Small things. Faint silver lines beneath her skin near her temples. Tiny scars near the base of her neck hidden beneath silver hair. Patterns too precise to be natural. Nathan felt something tighten in his stomach. "You said you have seen her before," he said quietly. "Where?" The woman looked down at the little hologram once more. Her expression changed slightly. Confusion mixed with sadness. "I do not remember." Nathan stared at her without blinking. Outside, the storm suddenly seemed smaller somehow. Because for the first time that night something frightened him more than the cold. The woman slowly lifted her eyes toward him and whispered, "Nathan, I do not think I remember who I am." Nathan did not answer right away. He sat there watching her while the small hologram continued drifting above the memory archive. The little girl reached upward toward stars only she could see, smiling as tiny lights danced around her face. Nathan looked at the image and felt something strange settle into his chest. Not because of the child, because of the way the woman beside him was staring at her. Like someone standing outside a house they used to live in, staring through the windows without remembering where the key went. Outside the truck, the storm finally seemed to be losing strength. The violent impacts against steel had softened into quieter rhythms. Snow still moved across the windshield, but slower now. Tired, Nathan leaned forward and carefully adjusted the heater another notch. "Memory loss," he said quietly. "How long?" She looked toward him with confusion still sitting behind her eyes. "I do not know." Nathan nodded once. "Do you remember your name?" Silence. She looked down at her hands. "No home. Nothing. Family." Her throat moved slightly. "Nothing again." Nathan looked away toward the windshield. For some reason that answer bothered him. More than he expected. Because he knew what losing people felt like. But losing yourself? He could not imagine that. The little hologram shifted suddenly. Tiny stars disappeared, and the image flickered once. Then again. Nathan frowned. The silver device had started pulsing faster now. Small symbols moved across its surface in a language he had never seen before. The woman immediately looked down. Fear returned to her eyes. "That is not normal." Nathan sat up slightly. "You sure?" "Yes." Her fingers moved quickly across the circular patterns again. Nothing changed. Then suddenly the truck radio crackled. Both of them froze. Static exploded through the speakers, loud enough to make Nathan flinch. Then a voice pushed through the interference. Mechanical. Distorted. Unregistered signal identified. Nathan stared at the dashboard. The radio had been dead all night. Slowly another line came through beneath heavy static. Searching local sector. Nathan's face changed instantly. The relaxed expression vanished. 20 years of old instincts switched back on without permission. His eyes moved toward the motion scanner mounted beside the steering wheel. For 1 second there was nothing. Then blue icons appeared. 1, 2, 3. Nathan felt his jaw tighten. Unknown signatures. Distance, 2.3 miles. Moving fast. The woman looked toward the display, and all color disappeared from her face. "No." Nathan looked at her immediately. "You know them?" Her breathing became shallow. "No." The answer came too quickly again. Nathan stared at her for a moment. Then toward the approaching signals. The scanner chirped again. Distance, 1.8 miles. Nathan looked outside through the windshield. At first he saw nothing except darkness and snow. Then far in the distance, beyond the storm, small lights appeared. White lights. Moving. Nathan slowly leaned back in his seat. His eyes drifted toward the old military case secured behind him. The dusty one he had ignored earlier. He stared at it for several long seconds. Then he exhaled quietly through his nose. "I was really hoping not to open that thing tonight." Nathan kept staring at the old combat case for several seconds. The approaching signals continued moving across the scanner, steady and precise. Not drifting through the storm. Not random travelers. Whoever they were, they knew exactly where they were going. Nathan leaned forward slowly and released the security latch beneath the case handle. A soft click echoed through the cabin. The woman looked toward him immediately. Her eyes moved between him and the opening lid. Nathan lifted it halfway. Inside rested old equipment beneath layers of dust. A field scanner. Emergency supplies. A faded service patch from years ago. Nothing dramatic. Nothing dangerous. Just things from another life he had stopped opening a long time ago. Nathan reached inside and pulled out a compact signal jammer no larger than his hand. You kept that? She asked quietly. Nathan looked at it and shrugged. Retirement makes people weird. He activated it and placed it beside the dashboard. A soft blue light appeared. The scanner screen flickered briefly. Outside, distant white lights vanished for a second before returning. Nathan frowned. Well, he said quietly, that should have worked better. The woman looked down at the glowing memory archive still resting in her hands. The tiny holographic girl had disappeared now. Only the silver device remained. The symbols racing across its surface had changed. Nathan noticed her expression shift again. Confusion, then shock. What? He asked. She stared at the device without blinking. Her lips parted slightly. I remember something. Nathan did not speak. He waited. Her fingers tightened around the archive. Not everything. Her voice sounded distant now. Just pieces. Outside, the storm had almost completely faded. Through the windshield, the dark sky above Karen 7 slowly began clearing. Nathan could see stars appearing beyond thinning clouds. The woman looked upward without really seeing them. There were buildings. Her eyes narrowed slightly. White towers. Another pause. Children running. Nathan stayed silent. Someone was holding my hand. Her breathing caught softly. A little girl. Nathan looked toward her carefully. The one from the archive? She nodded slowly. I remember her laughing. The corners of her eyes tightened. I remember sunlight. More silence. Then suddenly she froze completely. Nathan saw it happen instantly. Her eyes widened. Not with fear. Recognition. Lasara. Nathan blinked once. What? She looked at him slowly. My name. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Lasara. For a moment neither of them spoke. Nathan looked at her while the heater hummed quietly between them. Lasara. The name somehow fit her. He was about to say something when the radio suddenly crackled again. Static burst through the cabin before a mechanical voice pushed through. Clear this time. Target signal acquired. Nathan looked at the scanner immediately. The approaching markers had stopped moving. Distance, 600 feet. Silence filled the truck. Nathan stared at the screen, then toward the windshield. Far beyond the bridge, lights hovered in the darkness. Waiting. Lasara looked at him slowly. Nathan. He looked back at her. Her golden eyes seemed different now. Softer somehow. More certain. You turned around for someone you did not know. Nathan stared at her quietly. Snow drifted gently outside beneath the stars now. The storm was gone. For the first time all night, there was only silence. Then Nathan leaned back in his seat and looked toward the sky above the frozen bridge. Funny thing is, he said softly, I think I know you a little now. Lasara looked at him without speaking. And somewhere above them, beyond ice and stars and distance, dawn finally began touching the horizon.